looks like more and more folks are joining in. So I don't know if Tiffany is going to give us kind of the go sign when we think we've got the bulk of folks joining.
There should be 14 people total, and we're at 11. Okay. And we are recording, and we'll send out to all these folks as well.
Great. Well, then in the meantime, we can do the Cougar Fight song led by Kurt. So Kurt, go ahead and give us a nice little interlude of the fight song.
Actually, I'm hoping they don't return this week. So my WSU enthusiasm is not very high right
now. Well, here I can help maybe. How about that? That should be just our on hold music, I think, right?
There you go. Yeah, actually,
I'm amazed that you have that. You have that so readily available, Pete.
You're shocked at that, Trev?
A little bit.
That surprises you?
No, actually, it doesn't.
Good to see you, Brad. Glad we got some good good participation in these sessions. Tiffany, do you have you're doing what are you doing? You're doing a registration RSVP thing for all of these sessions, right?
Correct. So they're all through a Zoom link. So you automatically will receive the link, but that just makes it so we know who to send the recordings to and who shows up. So all of them are hosted by WRPA, and then the pre-webinar, like basically Legislative Day 101 and actual Legislative Day, is through WWRC.
Great. Fabulous.
We're just missing Roxanne, so you probably could get started.
All right. Well, Travis, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, we'll kick us off. Just like Pete said, we're joking, but it's a little bit serious. We're not from the Department of Revenue. These are all going to be this is all perspective that you're getting. My perspective is being with the Metropolitan Park District and at SciView for 14 years now, and having experience with prorationing, and then having to get a crash course in what that is, and also the Washington State property tax system. So feel free to speak up if we're getting astray somewhere. And then also there are overlapping jurisdictional authorities. The way that this all affects Metropolitan Park Districts and Park and Recreation Districts and Park and Recreation Service Areas is all very, very similar. So really the only main difference is authority and order of prorationing for those. So first we'll go over, we have to go over, property taxes as they work in Washington as a revenue source to understand prorationing. And then we'll get into what prorationing is and what options you have. Also, I don't know if there's people that are on the line that are considering a Metropolitan Park District or I guess I would say a special purpose district. But there are pros and cons to how you're setting those up on the desired outcome, I guess. Your exposure to prorationing is less in some ways if you set it up, and then more in other ways, but then you trade off with maybe not getting your whole market area by the way you set it up.
Hey, Travis, real quick.
Yeah.
Let's get Elaine introduced, and just for folks.
Yeah.
And then also maybe just Elaine, if you don't mind sharing kind of how this emanated from a concern you're facing and what's leading to some proposed legislative policy, which we'll get into here momentarily. But Elaine, you want to just introduce yourself? And
yes, so yeah, my name is Elaine Rocheford. I'm with the Vashon Park District, and I thought I'd let Travis kind of do the presentation, then I'll speak from a Park and Recreation District standpoint on what happened to us for 2021 and what we're attempting to do about it with a House bill that's in 2021 legislation. So yeah, I'll pipe up after Travis does his thing. But thanks, Peter. Appreciate it.
yeah, exactly how we rehearsed it. So I'm glad we're sticking to our plan. Travis, take it away.
All right. And you'll probably notice some of the language in here is something I'd never say. That tax districts have the power to impose burdens. I'd say that's a burden. But you have senior taxing districts for the state, the county, city or town, county road, port, and public. Junior tax districts are all others. So your MPDs, your park districts, your cemetery districts, your hospital districts. Those are all your junior taxing districts. So this is, again, going to be specific to Metropolitan Park Districts. When they're created, their authority is really split up into two different levies, 50 cents per thousand and 25 cents per thousand. They look at them as one, but in order of when you come down to prorationing, it makes a difference. They're on two different levels, and we'll get into that in a second. As all other tax authorities are, you're subject to the 1% or the 101% of your previous year's levy every year, and then plus new construction. However, that levy rate can be reduced through prorationing, and we'll get into that a little bit more. But prorationing is based off of the scale or the tiers of the junior and senior taxing districts. As noted here, you can, like Metropolitan Park District of Tacoma, they forever have the authority to go to their voters and protect the 25 cents assessed valuation of their levy. And then Skyview in 2010 was able to get legislation approved, and it was written very, very narrow, but it allowed us to go out and protect 25 cents of our levy as well. Since that time, that legislation has sunset. Only for, not for Metro Parks, it's sunset for jurisdictions similar to Skyview. Some major definitions, and I'm going to go over these kind of fast because I assume most people kind of get a general idea of how property taxes work. If not, slow me down, and I can discuss it a little bit and further. Property taxes applied, assessed value of all taxable property, real and personal, within the state. The assessed value is determined by the county assessor through their appraisal process, which they try to do at least 95% of market value. The aggregate tax rate consists of all the combined levy rates. So when you add up King County, or when you add the county roads, city, then hospital, library, fire, park district, Metropolitan Park District, cemetery, when you add flood district, when you add all those up, that's your aggregate levy amount, a tax rate.
And maybe Travis has to chime in too. I think
Yep.
What I didn't have a firm grasp on until I was down in Vancouver and Clark County was there's a whole range of smaller tax code districts within your boundary. And so just to add another layer of complexity is you have these more discrete tax code districts within your jurisdiction that factors in all this. So just something to be mindful too.
Look, 100%. So in our instance, so I think Skyview is actually created, Skyview Metropolitan Park District is created 5 different levy tax codes. And it's actually only one of those tax codes within our 5 is the one that we have problems with, because there's so many different layers of taxing authorities they just come, there's a black hole right there. So that's the one that always is at a threshold to pray. So, so just, and then going back to what we're here is your tax rate, and this is what it pertains to this, a tax district levy rate has to be uniformly applied across all levy codes within your jurisdiction. So, in our case, we have 5 codes, and only 1 is over. We can't just do less in there and then levy more on the other codes. They have to be all the same. So whatever is the lowest amount, that's what we have to be at. The property tax rate is expressed in terms of dollars per thousand, or an assessed valuation, known as I'm sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied. Property tax rate is expressed in terms of dollars per thousand in assessed valuation, known as property tax rate. So ours last year was 47 cents per thousand assessed valuation. So the levy calculation, so it's basically the amount you need to fund next year's operations, which is your levy amount, that total amount. So we need, last year we levied $1 million. Well, now you can only 101% of that, you get $10,000 more plus new construction. So you take $1 million, $1,010,000, you divide that by your assessed valuation, and that's going to equal your levy rate, more or less. Unless the statute of limitations on levy rates are reached, a district's levy rate is determined the following way, which we just kind of discussed. So there's 2 main aggregate property tax limits, and they both apply to, well, they apply to everybody. You have the statutory limit, which is $5.90, and that's that aggregate limit for all junior taxing, all taxing districts. It applies to most regular levies, and it can exceed that $5.90 per thousand. Then you have the constitutional 1% limit, and that limits the amount of property tax may be imposed on individual parcels without voter approval to 1% of its true and fair value. So again, going back to the aggregate limit, you have that $5.90, and all the tax levy codes within your jurisdiction can't exceed that $5.90 when you add up all those levies. There are exceptions to that. State levies, public utility districts, port districts, conservation futures, emergency medical service, low-income housing, federal districts, county criminal justice levies, fire districts, levies by counties, transit purposes, and so there are some exceptions. They got in early. If the $5.90 aggregate is exceeded, this is when prorationing kicks in. And so what happened is the more senior districts like cities, county roads, they levy first. This is the way I best understand it and can explain it best. Is they levy first, and say after they receive their levy, there's $3 left. Well, now $2.90 has to be split up between hospital, fire, library, then park district. And they start at the bottom, chopping at the bottom before, so everyone at the top gets first and they chop at the bottom. That's a better way to understand it, I guess. That's how my brain works anyway. To give you an idea of the order, first is the cultural access program. Second is park and recreation districts, park and recreation service areas. Then you have flood control zones, hospitals, metropolitan park districts. At one of the levies of metropolitan park districts is at the 4th level. The other is at the 5th level. Then you have fire districts. And I don't remember if the Fire districts is split into two as well. There it is, the first 50 cents. Their dollar is at the 6th level. Then you have hospitals, and then Metro Parks Tacoma, they're the only park district in the Metropolitan Park District created in the state before 2002. So they're grandfathered into that 7th level with their 50 cents at that 7th level. Then at the top is the county roads and cities. So the constitutional 1%, it limits the amount of property taxes you can impose on an individual parcel without a vote. The true and fair value as opposed to the assessed value. And this is really just to show you that pro-rationing can happen on the two different silos is the way I look at it, when you have the state side versus the junior or the senior taxing district side. It's kind of the way I divide it up. And I'm not as familiar with pro-rationing occurring on that side. They typically, on the state side, typically has room on there. That's why everyone goes over there to protect. They protect it over on that 1% side. This is just to give you, this is old because the levy, I want to point out the levels have changed since I took this example. But it shows you the county, they get theirs, roads gets theirs, the total from level 7, is $2.97. Then you have fire, which is at their 50 cents, library, hospital. The total remaining after level 6 is $1.714. Then fire again at 47. Now you only have $1.23 remaining. And there we are at level 4, and we're at 50 cents. This year we were at 50 cents. So then by the end of it all, after you added up all those jurisdictions and their levy rates, you had a total aggregate of $5.26, rounding down.
So maybe just, Travis, the point there is, and keep in mind there's the 25 cents and there's the 50 cents. Yep. And there's different proration orders if you protected the 25 cents. Yeah. So, and what we mean by protected, when your board or enacted that additional levy of 25 cents in the resolution, you have to specifically explicitly state it's being protected in order for this to take effect. And I think maybe even the vote, it might even have to be in the voting language at the time of a park district is formed. I think it has to be in that actual language, but I'm not an attorney either. But the point being, there's these two different levels, different prorationing rankings for the 50 cents versus the 25 cents. But if you're levying up to your full statutory amount of 75 cents per thousand, you got problems. If this was the example, and so Travis lived through this. Elaine sounds like is living through it. I was at risk with it when I was part of the Greater Parks District in Vancouver, in the unincorporated area of Vancouver, Clark County. So it's a very real issue, and could have significant implications depending on what the economy and the market is. So I'll stop there and let you keep going, Travis.
No, I'll jump on that a little bit further because I think it's worth explaining. One, like I said, this is an older example. That's why it's highlighted, and Levy 5 is highlighted, because if you took this snapshot today, a Metropolitan Park District would be on level 5 and level 4. Level 5 would have the 50 cents. Level 4 would be your available 25 cents. And the reason that you only see us on the level 4 in this area is because at that time that was the 50 cents level. So we were taking 50 cents. We didn't need our level 3 at that time. And it's also worth noting, I don't know if this is the technical term for it, but I call it levy erosion. So when you're formed, in whatever year you're formed as a district, that sets the bar for your statutory limit of what you can bring in property tax wise. So that sets the bar for your assessed valuation, right? So whatever that amount was of your assessed valuation, 75 cents per thousand of your assessed valuation, that's your baseline. So say that was $1 million. Well, the next year as assessed valuation goes up, it doesn't take as much, it doesn't take a full 75 cents to reach that $1 million. So it may only take 72 cents per thousand. And so your levy rate is actually always going to keep dropping down. And so that's why right now, whenever I took, what year I took this from, it was only 50 cents per thousand was our levy rate, because we had already eroded 25 cents of our levy. Which comes into play if then that's the way it is for everybody. So if everyone comes back and does a levy lid lift and they reset their levy at their full statute authority, that eats into the 590, especially if they're above you in the prorationing order. So getting into causes, a decrease, some of the causes that cause for prorationing are a decrease in assessed valuation. We all saw this in the housing, tank. The recession of 2008, 2009, all the assessed values dropped. Well, when assessed values dropped, everybody's assessed values go down, but their levy rates go up just so they can levy the exact same amount they had the previous year. So if everyone's levies are going up, that affects you. That affects you as a more junior taxing district. What can also affect you is excess levies by more senior districts, and we see this a lot in King County. They have a funding model of excess levies. Those all affect us that are downstream of them, I guess you want to say, are lower on the prorationing order. Again, also if a more senior district goes out for a levy lid lift, which we saw this right before the recession, was the King County Library District had gone out and reset their levy up to 50 cents. So that took a big chunk out of the available $5.90. Then also, if there's any annexation or de-annexation, I guess depends on which agency you are. But you see this in King County, you see this with King County roads. And so they're, because the county is always being de-annexed or annexed, King County roads' ability to bring in more revenues, they're always at their ceiling because of their tax base, essentially their assessed valuation is shrinking. So if prorationing occurs, this is why Elaine is trying to get something proposed to the legislatures. There's not very many options. There really isn't. Essentially, you can do an excess levy, but there's only one excess levy you can do that does not count towards the $5.90 aggregate limit, and that's a 1-year operation and maintenance levy, and that's it. There are other examples of excess levies, but they're either not applicable towards what park service areas, park districts, and metropolitan park districts can do, or they count towards the $5.90 aggregate limit. Then the only other option, and it has to be, typically you would have to be a larger district than another district, but you could buy down another district so that they didn't levy as much, and then you paid them equivalent in cash, essentially. And that, I saw this example when the flood district in King County was going to be prorationed. They bought down all the fire districts, essentially bought them down in all the levy codes that were going to exceed the $5.90 aggregate limit. So you would really have to have a bigger footprint so that you could buy down one of the levy codes or buy down a district that was smaller than you. And us being park districts, that's usually typically not the case, but it is a reality. Just some resources for you guys if you want to explore this topic some more, and ask questions. I can give you briefly the scenario that happened with Skyview was in 2009 and 2009 and 2010, the flood district was buying down the fire districts, and that's when alerted us to. And then they kept doing that, and they said they were going to do it again, which helped us because they were below us. But then they said they weren't going to do that anymore, and they were going to protect themselves over on the state's 1% side. Well, if they jumped out of the way, then we're first in line to get pro-rationed. So we went to the legislature and mid-session and worked on language so that we could piggyback on the flood district to be protected on the 1% constitutional side, so that 25% at that what's now at the 4th level by voter approval could be protected. So we protected 25% or 25 cents of our levy, and then everything else was pro-rationed. So then we had to go out and do a 1-year M&O levy every subsequent year after that until I think 2015, and then we were out of pro-rationing. So we did 5 or 6 years. We had to do 1 year in M&O levies every year until we got out of it, which is not a very sustainable funding model. The plus side of it is you condition or you train your residents. They know by 4 years into it, they know, or they kind of know that it's coming, and it's easy to explain. And you say, well, we're not increasing taxes, we're levying the exact same amount, which obviously sometimes gets lost in translation. And so when you meet people out in the public, they can say or have said, why vote for you guys every year for your bonds? So then they think you're spending more money. So, but that's the only way that we could stay afloat, was to do 1 year M&O levies and get that protection. And other than that, there was no other way for us to do it.
Hey, Travis.
Yep.
On 1 year excess levy, is it based on your current assessed evaluation? So each year it was changing?
Yes. So every year, and that's the thing too, is you have to, there was 1 year we actually kind of double dipped, and it wasn't our fault. You get a preliminary assessed valuation from the county, maybe as early as starting as in September. But if you want to do a November ballot, you have to put that on in August, right? So we're guessing our assessed valuation for what it's going to be for the following year in August to get something on the November ballot. So we did our best to get that number. And then I think 1 year it was 20,000 low, but 1 year it was like 150,000 over. So yeah, it would change every year. So one of the things I did want to bring up for anyone that, I know, Kurt, you have a Metropolitan Park District, for those that would consider setting up on a standalone city on an island, you draw from around
Travis, I think we lost you. Kurt, you're not
There,
here
yeah, so
anymore.
you can,
Oh, there he is. We lost you there, Travis. You back? Oh, it's like he got booted out. There you go, technology. Well, maybe this is a good segue over to Elaine. Do you want to take it from here? And I also have the graphic, the chart with the constitutional limit, if that's helpful, Elaine.
Yeah, why don't you put that out kind of at the end? I'll just kind of tell my story real quickly. Yeah, so again, my name is Elaine Rocheford, and I'm the executive director of the Vashon Park District on Vashon Island. We're an island community that's in between Seattle and Tacoma in the Puget Sound, well, in the middle of the Puget Sound. So with Travis's explanation of what prorationing is, I would just like to speak a bit from the perspective of a park and recreation district that has just been prorationed for 2021. So park and recreation districts are entitled to a voter-approved levy rate of up to 60 cents per $1,000 of assessed property value within their jurisdiction. Well, last November, our levy was up for renewal, and we received an 80% voter approval for our requested rate of just 45 cents. And at the time, there was plenty of room within that 590 structure for all local taxing districts on Vashon, with remaining levy capacity to spare. So all was good. But in that same election, just this last November, there was a ballot measure for the formation of a new hospital district on Vashon. Hospital districts are a little different in that voters simply approve its formation, then the newly elected commissioners choose their rate the following year. So they chose a rate this year that was considerably higher than what was presented throughout their campaign, and the result is that we were hit for that difference. So a park and recreation district in that 590 structure is considered a level 1. I call it the pecking order, which means that we're basically the bottom of the heap when it comes to prorationing. So we were, and that was to the tune of 11.5% of our levy dollars. It was a really staggering hit. So, you know, what happened presently is one thing, but our greater concern is likely upcoming lid lifts from King County Roads and Library. If those two measures run and pass in the future, as we're anticipating, we will be 100% prorationed, which means we're going to be completely defunded with very unattractive options at our disposal, as Travis presented, you know, the excess levy or the buy down. They're just not sustainable in the long run. So knowing the likelihood of these things happening, I met with our two District 34 representatives and our senator, and we came up with what's called House Bill 1034, which is now in the pipeline for the 2021 legislative session. So this bill would effectively move a park and recreation district out of the 590 structure into what is called the 50-cent gap. And it's merely called the 50-cent gap because everything needs to add up to $10, which is that 1% constitutional limit. So there's the 590 for the local taxing districts, and then there's $3.60 for the state. That adds up to $9.50. So that 50-cent gap means that whomever lives there is entitled to that extra 50 cents plus whatever levy capacity is left over from the state and local buckets. So this bill doesn't change anything about the current rules surrounding a park and recreation district. All other things in that RCW remain the same. The only difference is that we would draw from a larger bucket of the levying capacity. So if the bill passes, we're going to be fine moving forward, no matter what King County does. And that, so this chart that Peter has put up that represents that $10 constitutional limit, which adds up to the $10, kind of gives you a visual sense for what that is. You see the 360 state on the bottom, the 590 local in the center, and then that 50-cent gap is up at the top. So do you, Peter, have the pro-rationing worksheet spreadsheet that I sent you?
I will try to pull that up.
Yeah, if you don't, that's fine. Basically, Travis had the 590 structure where the Metropolitan Park District was represented, I believe at level 4 was the lowest thing he had represented. Well, a park and recreation district is actually a level 1 down there at the bottom. So there's also then what's called a pro-rationing worksheet for the 1% constitutional limit. And there are 18 levels in that with state at the top. And with this House bill, it would move a park and recreation district from a level 1 in the 590 structure to, well, and in the 1% structure, that is equivalent to a level 11 in the pecking order. This would move a park and recreation district to a level 7 in that full 1% worksheet. So it's lower in the full pecking order, but there is more levying capacity to draw from. So I would just ask in my little portion of this presentation here that if you all are so inclined to support this bill, to encourage your representatives and your senators to vote in favor of, again, it's House Bill 1034. Anybody who's interested, I'm happy to send you the actual bill. It's pretty dry reading, but what I just explained effectively, it's relatively simple. It just moves from the 590 structure into the full $10 constitutional limit. Yeah, is that the, yeah. Oh, that's the 590.
That's the 590.
Yeah, so we could see us at the very bottom.
Sorry.
Yeah, so there's your level 8 is county, level 7.
Yeah, that's the 1%. Okay, so.
It's probably kind of hard to see. Level 1 is oh, I'm sorry, level 1 is the cultural access program. So we're a level 2, just the next level up. But for our purposes, we don't have any of the cultural access program here on Vashon. We're in the level 2 and we are the bottom of the pecking order.
Yeah, Kurt, go ahead.
2 questions. One, Elaine, just I want a clarification. You mentioned a hospital district being formed, potentially being formed. It sounded like they would take that to the voters the first year just to form the district, and then the next year they establish the rate.
Yeah, it's different from what we all contend with as park districts, where we have to ask for the voter approval on the rate. They don't. Now they can levy up to 75 cents total. They are they in two? Yeah, they're actually in two buckets as well. Their first 50 cents is a level 6, and their remaining 25 cents is a level 3, but they're still higher up than we are no matter what they do. These folks took a levy rate of 58 cents, and they campaigned on the promise that they were going to be somewhere between 40 and 45 cents. So that extra hit was pretty painful.
Okay, that's good to know, because our local hospital district just came out and said they're looking at expanding their boundaries, kind of more to the north. And I think they're only collecting currently like 34 cents. So our expectation was that at this, I thought it would be the same time they would put it on the ballot to expand, and this would be their levy rate they're collecting, but it sounds like that would follow the next year.
Actually, yeah, I believe that if they're increasing their rate, that has to be voter approved, but it's the initial formation of the hospital district is where they get to just choose any rate up to 75 cents.
Okay. And then I guess kind of a stupid question maybe for anybody on here. What, Pullman is a level 5, I guess. What's the difference between like us and then down there on level 2, the Parks and Recreation District? What defines the difference between those two?
So you're, it's different RCWs. So you're basically a different authorities. You're a Metropolitan Park District.
Okay.
And so instead of so you get, once you're created, it's a permanent levy. So that 75 cents, therefore after, whereas like Elaine is a park district every 5 years or however that levy, she has to go out every 5 years for her funding.
Yeah,
So
4
it's-
to 6.
Is the Metro Park still an option for people to pursue?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So Kurt, so just as Travis said, the beauty of a Metropolitan Parks District is at time of formation, setting that permanent levy amount. And that's one of the distinguishing factors between the other forms. In addition, a Metropolitan Parks District has the maximum flexibility in terms of what you're authorized to engage in, the kinds of activities you're authorized to engage in. It's very far reaching. I think it even includes like airports or something crazy. I'd have to reread the statute, but it's quite a portfolio in statute that you can facilitate overseeing and operating as a Metropolitan Park District, whereas the service districts have far more, or service areas have far more limitations. Other questions folks have? It's a very convoluted, complex set of rules, and we learned, there was a large group of us that convened in Tukwila, whenever that was, 2011 or 10 or something, Travis. And we also, at that time, we were getting conflicting interpretations from Department of Revenue about how the pro-rationing process actually works. And I think since then, a lot more clarity has come. So, which has been helpful. But I mean, this isn't an easy, I mean, that's why the property tax manual is whatever it is, 100 and something pages long. It's not for the weak of heart, for sure. And again, restating our disclaimer, we're not accountants or CFOs or attorneys, but it's something to certainly inquire with your local experts, your finance directors, your county treasurers, and even some cases, assessor's office as well.
Hey, I forgot about it until now, and it's not a permanent strategy, but when King County was about to do, before King County was about to approve or put on the ballot the Best Start for Kids levy, it was thought that potentially we would be pro-rationed and then also fire districts. So we lobbied our council, King County Council, to put, I guess successfully and unsuccessfully, fire districts they wrote into the legislation of Best Starts for Kids, if fire districts were pro-rationed, that money from the Best Start for Kids would come back to those fire districts. We tried to get that same, but it got changed to, they allocated, I think they set aside $3 million within the Best Start for Kids levy funding, to where if we were pro-rationed, that we could access that limited funding. So it's still convoluted and you could argue that it's not right because voters are voting for Best Start for Kids, and then they end up funding fire districts and park districts. But anyway, it was a short-term protection strategy that we had also pursued.
Hi everybody, I've got a question. I'm new to this group, so thank you for the presentation. I work for the city of Bothell, but I'm part of the North Shore Parks and Recreation Service area. We just passed a 6-year M&O levy. It's the first levy this service area has ever passed. So I'm just kind of getting into this world that you've all been in for some time. So I appreciate the presentation. I'm curious if I can use that Excel worksheet that you all have pulled up. How the materials will be available after this call.
Yeah, Carly, thanks for joining us and welcome aboard, and just know you're not alone as a special purpose district. So feel free to lean on those of us who have a corner of the world, and it's only a corner. We don't profess to have a full comprehension of all of it, but feel free to lean on us. I'm going to put in the chat box the link to the Municipal Research Services Center, which I think gives you everything you need to know on this topic. And in there, there's some links midway down the page to those two spreadsheets, the 1% limit, pro-rationing order, and the 590 aggregate limit. So you can have access to those.
Excellent, thank you. And then my other question was, you probably mentioned this, Travis, and I just missed it, but I don't have a lot of clarity on how you decide what levies in your district like factor add up to that 590 limit. In our context, we span 2 counties and 3 cities and several fire districts and other districts, so I'm not sure how to add all that up.
That would be what you would do is but you're all in one county, aren't you?
No, we're in both King and Snohomish County.
So you're Carly, you a service area? Is that what you are?
Yeah.
Yeah. So service areas are far more convoluted, and there's very few of you that exist that I'm aware of in Washington State. So that makes it more complex because you're extending beyond multiple jurisdictional boundaries, and I'm not entirely clear then how the tax code districts work in those cases.
Pete, so it should theoretically be the same, but you would have to work with both your King County Assessor's Department and Snohomish County's Assessor Department to determine. You're going to have 2 different 590 sheets, if you want to call it, to see all the competition, I guess you would say, as for where you are going to align on those levy rates, and you're going to be subject to the lowest one, really, out of all of them.
Okay, that's helpful. It's like I get to do all the work twice. Then, like.
Well, if you contact the assessor's office in the counties, I mean, it should be a one person in each department that you should be able to get that breakdown for you.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
And for King County, it's Linda. I can look it up because Hazel just retired and there's a new person and that's who you would talk to.
Okay.
It's Linda Wilder, just to chime.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just add to the conversation that, getting that information from the assessor treasurer and kind of knowing what's available and what's not, it's really helpful to have this conversation, even not managing a park district, because so often, cities, counties, we hear that that's the solution. And as Travis mentioned, in RCWs, they made kind of so there's not just one type of park district, right? They made accommodation, and a lot of those accommodations I think had to do with then which level of funding that could be supported at the time. And I know when the county looked at that, because we have such a huge unincorporated area, there's 2 park districts out on the Key Peninsula, and they thought, well, hey, there should be another one. But then it really started looking at those park districts that are so far down on the totem pole, that's all you have room for. But to Elaine's point, if you were actually formed under that, then you're actually creating something that is constantly in this question of financial viability. And it was actually that determination that really encouraged us to not try to get another park district to form in the county, at least where it's at. We do have an advantage as the county in that we do have a conservation futures program. So while it's not M&O and it's not, park funding per se, it does provide for the provision of open space, and there's some maintenance funds related to that. So sometimes it's trying to find strategies with programs that you can manage that are higher on the pecking order that can bring those resources to you, even if your baseline M&O might be tied at a lower level. And Kurt, I think you raised that question. I think there's just such an awareness that people don't have. So if you already exist, but you're at such a low rate, how do you go back out and convince people to create a new district or an actual metro park district or something that actually is more secure? But I think it really is making that case about security. They get lost in the charts, but if you really want to say how much of the value of the dollar does it take to protect what you have, and how do we get there? But getting past whatever fight of the other jurisdictions that may lose in that process, I think has been the other reason why something hasn't moved forward in our area.
I'm pretty sure, I don't know if anyone from Bainbridge is on here, but Bainbridge, they switched from being a park district to a Metropolitan Park District somewhere around within the last 10 years, I believe. I don't know how they did it, but pretty sure they did it.
Travis,
Yeah, there's
just real quick, if you do a levy lid lift, does that reset your assessed valuation, your
So-
board baseline?
Yes, but there's different, so we're talking about convoluted, there's kind of chaos right outside my door if that is loud, but it depends on the way you do the levy lid lift. Like we just did a permanent levy lid lift, and that'll reset, or you can do 1 or 2 year levy lid lifts. It depends on what you set it, but it does set that bar. It does reestablish your levy rate. So now that you've been established for 10 years, your AV is 3 times as what it was when you were created. And talking about that levy erosion, which I was talking about before, you got a whole 25 cents you can go back out and get. So yeah, it resets your statutory levy rate. It resets that, or it allows you to take that.
Okay.
I'm sorry, just a little more. When you get your worksheet from the assessor's department, and it gives you an allowable levy and it gives you a statutory levy, and the statutory levy is one if you did a full levy lift and it had 75 cents according to your new assessed value. Your allowable levy is your 101% of last year's. So your finance manager would have that. They get it every year.
And Kurt, I put in the chat just a quick summary of the authorities of an MPD. It does include aviation landings, so I stand corrected. It's aviation landings, not to be confused, with another special purpose district for ports. But good luck with the aviation landings. All right. Any other questions or confusion we can create? Just a lot of kudos to Elaine helping initiate this effort, and Travis suffered a lot through this and navigated his local political scene to get some temporary relief during the recession of 2009. So it does happen, and it can be pretty significant, as Elaine has noted. So really appreciate the advocacy and the support to try to get some protections in place. So I think if no other questions, Travis and Elaine, I think that might be a wrap. And just note, as Roxanne says here, this will be available on the WRPA site for future posterity's sake.
Yep. And don't hesitate to reach out to us if you want any more confusion.
I would really suggest, if you're thinking about trying to do something this fall, I would think twice, because your voter turnout has to be 40% of the general election last year, which, being a presidential election, was huge.
Yep.
And we lived through that here in Pullman a couple of years ago when we tried to pass some bonds. We had overwhelming support, but we did not reach our 40% to validate the results. And then so 4 months later, we went in February, because the next general election numbers were like half of what they were, and we easily passed, but it cost us money to do it. So just something to keep in mind and talk to your people if you're thinking about trying to do something this coming fall.
Great point, Kurt. And one other important bureaucratic detail, which has a few folks encountered, Tukwila and City of Seattle, is if you're working to establish a new district, you've got to have that affirmative vote prior to July. So you can't get it in the primary election. DOR requires that affirmative vote in the organization of the district prior to, there's like a July deadline for them to compute all the tax related matters associated with the district. So some people got caught off guard thinking they were going to go on a primary to initiate their park district, and they have to wait a full year, meaning it's not the immediate next January. They got to go all the way around the clock, a full cycle, before they can start collection for that district. And so then you're into bridge financing, which Tukwila Parks District had to do, and City of Seattle. They did an interfund loan to float themselves a year for that. But that catches a lot of people by surprise. It's this small little detail in the DOR manual. So appreciate you raising that your issue as well. All right, I think that's a wrap. Thanks, Travis and Elaine and Roxanne, for helping get us all organized, and Tiffany and the WRPA gang. Thanks for taking time, and there's more Lunch and Learn series coming up, right, Roxanne?
Thank you so much. It's nice to meet you all virtually.
Good luck, Carly.
Absolutely.
So thank you for your work.